The stars shimmered against the dark canvas of space as Earth's ambassador, Michael Harris, prepared for one of the most important meetings in humanity's history. He had been chosen for his experience, his calm demeanor, and his unwavering belief in peace. The Galactic Council had invited Earth to join their ranks, offering humanity a chance to finally be part of something greater, something unified. Michael stood aboard the sleek diplomatic ship, looking out at the vastness of the universe. The feeling of awe was always there, no matter how many times he gazed into the stars. This time, however, there was a weight on his shoulders. The peace talks with the Galactic Council could mean the end of centuries of conflict. He hoped it would bring prosperity and stability, not just for Earth, but for all the civilizations in the galaxy. As the ship neared the Council's headquarters, a giant space station orbiting the center of a distant planet, Michael's thoughts shifted to the possible dangers. Earth had been isolated for so long, its people distrustful of the other species. Some of them still remembered the battles, the pain, the scars. The Council was powerful, but could they truly accept humanity? Or would they see Earth as a threat, something to control? He wasn't naive. He knew that peace came with risks. Still, he believed in diplomacy, in the power of words and trust. "We have to try," he whispered to himself. The ship docked with the station, and Michael was escorted to the Grand Council Hall. Representatives from dozens of species lined the walls, each one unique in appearance, culture, and mannerisms. Some were humanoid, others far less recognizable. Strange, insectoid beings, towering giants, and delicate, ethereal creatures. But despite their differences, they all shared one thing: a desire for peace, or so it seemed. The doors opened, and Michael was led into the chamber. It was massive, a dome-shaped room filled with holograms, soft lighting, and a long curved table at the center. At the table sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy, each one watching him intently. The leader of the council, a regal-looking alien with dark purple skin and glowing eyes, rose to greet him. "Ambassador Harris, welcome to the Galactic Council. We are honored to meet with you today. Humanity's participation will be a turning point for all of us." Michael felt a lump in his throat, but he composed himself. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. The galaxy was watching, and he would not let Earth down. "I thank you for this opportunity," he replied, his voice steady. "Earth seeks peace, not just for our people, but for the entire galaxy. Let's make history together." But behind the smooth words and the formal greetings, something felt off. There was a strange tension in the air, a hidden unease that Michael couldn't quite place. Unbeknownst to him, this was the calm before the storm, and the peace he had hoped for was slipping further away than he realized. As Michael sat down at the table, the members of the Galactic Council exchanged glances, some wary, some calculating. Peace was only a dream for some, but for others, it was a threat they couldn't allow to become reality. As the meeting continued, Michael Harris couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The peaceful words from the council members seemed genuine, but there was a subtle tension in the air. He noticed the way some of the representatives exchanged quiet glances when they thought no one was watching. A slight frown from a tall, insect-like alien in the corner caught his attention, but when Michael looked back, the creature's expression was neutral again. The leader of the council, High Chancellor Velarn, spoke with a voice that commanded respect, but there was something cold beneath the surface. "Ambassador Harris, your planet's inclusion in the Galactic Treaty would bring an era of prosperity. But peace is a fragile thing, and we must consider all possibilities." Michael nodded, maintaining his calm exterior. He had studied the council members extensively. He knew that some species had a long history of distrust toward humanity. Earth had been isolated, and many feared the unknown. But he was here to prove that humanity was ready for peace, ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's finest. "We understand the challenges of coexistence," Michael replied. "Earth's people are no strangers to conflict, but we have learned. We seek to contribute to the peace, not disrupt it." Velarn's eyes narrowed, his gaze flickering to a few other members of the council. Michael could feel the weight of their scrutiny, but he didn't waver. As the discussions went on, Michael's mind kept returning to the feeling of unease. He trained for this moment, prepared for every scenario in the peace talks. But this was different. Something didn't feel right. It wasn't just the tension in the room. It was the way some council members were avoiding his eyes, the subtle shifts in posture, the low murmurs that seemed to linger in the background. Then, in a split second, everything changed. Without warning, a blinding flash of light cut through the air. The entire council chamber erupted into chaos. Michael barely had time to react before the air around him was filled with crackling energy. He heard a loud blast, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the ground. People screamed. Panic set in. In the confusion, Michael's security detail rushed to his side, but it was too late. He looked down in disbelief at the sight before him. The energy blast had struck him directly in the chest. The pain was sharp, but it was not enough to knock him unconscious. Blood stained his suit as he stumbled, his vision blurring. Before he could regain his balance, a shadow appeared at the edge of the room. A figure in a dark cloak, their face hidden, moved quickly across the chamber. In an instant, they were gone, leaving behind a room of shouting chaos and confusion. Michael tried to speak, but his words came out as a whisper. What happened? His mind raced, trying to make sense of the sudden attack. The council, those who had promised peace, had just turned on him. But why? As he was pulled to safety, the last thing Michael saw was the stunned faces of the council members. The peace they had promised was gone, shattered by an unknown enemy. But who was behind it, and why? The answer lay somewhere in the council's dark corners, and Michael knew this was just the beginning of a far greater struggle. Back on Earth, the news of Michael Harris' assassination spread like wildfire. The planet's leaders were in shock, unable to comprehend the brutal murder of their ambassador. What was meant to be a new chapter in human history had been cut short in the most violent and unexpected way. The promise of peace, the years of preparation, had all been shattered. President Evelyn Pierce stood in the war room, surrounded by military officials and advisors. Her face was pale, her expression hard. The attack on Michael had not only killed a trusted diplomat, it had sent a powerful message to Earth and the galaxy. The Council had claimed to want peace, but their actions told a different story. This was no accident, President Pierce said, her voice steady but filled with anger. They knew exactly what they were doing. Someone within the Council orchestrated this. Commander Jason Blake, the leader of Earth's Special Forces, nodded in agreement. He had seen the devastation of war firsthand, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Council's promise of peace had been nothing more than a trap, and humanity had walked straight into it. "We need to find out who did this and why," Blake said, his tone grim. "And we need to make sure this doesn't go unanswered." The president's eyes narrowed. "We will make sure they regret this. No one attacks Earth's people and gets away with it." As the meeting continued, plans were made for the next steps. Earth's military forces would begin an investigation, but more importantly, they would prepare for retaliation. The galaxy needed to know that humanity would not be silenced. This was not just about an ambassador. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Earth would fight for its people and its future. Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council station, chaos was unfolding. The news of Michael's death reached the leaders of the various factions, and the council members scrambled to cover their tracks. Some of them were genuinely shocked, others less so. The attack had been planned meticulously, and those responsible had hoped to hide their involvement. But the truth was starting to emerge. A handful of council members, led by Villarn, had conspired to eliminate Earth's influence before it could truly take root. They feared that humanity, with its intelligence and tenacity, would eventually become a powerful force in the galaxy. The peace talks were just a facade, something to lure Earth into a vulnerable position. Now the Council was in damage control. They had to spin the story, make it seem like the attack was the work of a rogue faction, or better yet, that it had been a tragic accident. But Vlarn and his allies knew the truth. They knew this was no accident. This was their plan all along. But something went wrong. They hadn't anticipated the level of resilience humanity had. Earth was not going to sit back and accept this betrayal. The response would be swift and unforgiving. Back on Earth, Commander Blake gathered a team of elite soldiers. They would go to the Council station, track down those responsible, and bring them to justice. But as Blake looked at the team he had assembled, one thought dominated his mind. This wouldn't just be about retribution. This would be about proving to the galaxy that Earth was no longer a pawn. It was a force to be reckoned with. And the Council would learn that the hard way. The news of Michael Harris' death had shaken Earth to its core. Commander Jason Blake, a man who had seen more than his share of battles, now found himself thrust into a mission unlike any other. The assassination of Earth's ambassador was no random act. It was part of a larger, darker scheme within the Galactic Council. Blake knew that the stakes were higher than ever, and failure was not an option. In a secure underground facility, Blake gathered his team of elite soldiers. These men and women were not only warriors, they were investigators, skilled in tracking down threats no matter how deeply they were buried. The task ahead of them was clear. They needed to find out who was behind the assassination, expose the conspiracy within the Council, and ensure that humanity's response was swift and powerful. "Listen up," Blake began, his voice cold and firm. "We're not just investigating this attack. We're uncovering the truth. Someone within the Galactic Council is responsible for this. We need answers, and we need them fast. Whatever we find, we bring it to the light. No one is above the law, not even the Council." The team nodded, understanding the gravity of the mission. Among them was Dr. Leela Chan, a brilliant hacker and intelligence expert. She was the best when it came to gathering information from the most secure systems, and Blake had no doubt she would play a crucial role in uncovering the conspiracy. "We'll start with the Council's communications," Dr. Chan said, tapping on her tablet. "There's bound to be a trail somewhere. These things don't happen without coordination. Someone had to give the order." Blake agreed. It wasn't just about tracking down the killer. It was about understanding why Michael was targeted. Earth's military might not be the largest, but humanity had always been underestimated. This attack, however, was personal. Michael's death was a signal, a declaration of war, and Earth needed to respond in kind. As the investigation began, Blake's team worked tirelessly to dig through the vast network of data the Galactic Council had created. They uncovered encrypted messages, private communications, and covert meetings between Council members. The deeper they went, the more they uncovered. Alliances forged in secrecy, deals made in the shadows, and a group of Council members who had been plotting against humanity from the start. Blake was growing more furious with every new piece of information. The betrayal was not just an attack on Michael, it was an attack on Earth's future. The Council had seen humanity as a threat, and rather than negotiate with them, they had decided to eliminate the problem before it could even begin. But there was a twist. Dr. Chan's eyes widened as she found something important. A series of encrypted files, recently deleted but not fully erased, pointed to a faction within the Council. A faction led by none other than Vlarn, the Council's leader, who had once promised Earth peace. "We've got him," Dr. Chan said, her voice tight. "Vlarn and his allies. They're the ones who set this all in motion." Blake's expression darkened. "Vlarn? I should have known. He's the one who played us all." Now they had the evidence. It was time to make their move. The Galactic Council was about to face the wrath of a humanity that would not be silenced. Blake looked at his team, their eyes filled with determination. "We've found the truth. Now we bring it to the galaxy." The investigation had uncovered the Council's darkest secret. Earth had been betrayed, but now humanity would make sure that the Council would never underestimate them again. The road ahead would be dangerous, but Earth had no choice but to fight back, because the galaxy was about to learn what happens when you mess with humanity. The air in Earth's command center was thick with tension. The team had gathered the evidence, and now the question was not if, but how humanity would respond. Commander Jason Blake stood before the gathered military leaders, his face set in determination. The death of Ambassador Michael Harris had ignited a fire in the hearts of Earth's leaders. No longer would they stand by while others dictated their fate. The investigation had uncovered the truth. Valarn and a dangerous faction within the Galactic Council had orchestrated Michael's assassination. They feared humanity's potential and sought to stop it before it could grow too powerful. Now, Earth had a choice: negotiate for justice or take matters into their own hands. "We can't just wait for them to apologize," Blake said, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "The Galactic Council killed our ambassador. They need to understand that humanity won't be bullied anymore." President Evelyn Pierce, her face hardened with resolve, nodded in agreement. "We will not let this act of betrayal go unanswered. The Council will feel the weight of our retaliation, but we must act quickly, before they have a chance to cover their tracks or spin this into something it's not." Blake's eyes met the president's. The decision had been made. Earth would not bow to threats, nor would they beg for peace. The time for diplomacy was over. The time for action had arrived. "We're going to strike fast, strike hard, and let them know Earth will not be intimidated," Blake continued. "We will send a message to the entire galaxy." Blake's words were met with nods of approval from the gathered commanders. Earth's military forces were already prepared to mobilize. The fleet had been assembled, and the weapons were ready, but this was not going to be a simple war. This was going to be a fight for survival, for dignity, and for humanity's place in the galaxy. The mission was clear. Earth's fleet would move toward the heart of the Galactic Council, a powerful station located in the center of a disputed region of space. It was time to take the fight to them. "We'll make it clear that we stand as one," Blake said, as the room buzzed with activity. "Every soldier, every ship, every weapon. We send the message that humanity will not back down." Hours later, Earth's fleet, hundreds of warships, fighters, and support vessels, were moving through space at top speed. Blake stood at the bridge of the flagship, staring out at the vast expanse of stars. The mission had begun, and the first wave of humanity's retaliation was underway. As the fleet neared the Galactic Council station, Blake couldn't help but think about the consequences. War would bring destruction, but Earth had been pushed too far. They had to show the galaxy that there would be no more easy targets. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. The first salvo was fired without warning. The fleet's weapons unleashed a torrent of laser fire, striking the Council's outer defenses. The battle had begun. Blake's heart pounded as he watched the ships in front of him return fire. But it was clear, Earth was not backing down. The message had been sent. And now, the galaxy would watch as humanity made its stand. "Prepare for the next wave," Blake said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We won't stop until they understand the price of betrayal." The battle had begun, and the galaxy was on edge. Humanity's fleet, led by Commander Jason Blake, struck first, tearing through the Galactic Council's outer defenses with precise, devastating force. The Council, unprepared for the scale and speed of Earth's retaliation, scrambled to regroup. But the damage had already been done. The first wave of conflict had proven one thing: humanity would not back down. Back on Earth, President Evelyn Pierce stood before the holographic map of the galaxy, her face lit by the cold blue glow of the projection. The warships continued to press forward, cutting through space like a blade. She watched the unfolding events with a mixture of pride and concern. Earth had made its stand, but the stakes were higher than ever. "How long until they send reinforcements?" she asked, her eyes fixed on the moving symbols of enemy ships. "Within hours," a military officer responded. "The Galactic Council's forces are not scattered. They'll regroup quickly, but we have the advantage of surprise. Our ships are faster and better prepared. Pierce nodded, but the weight of the situation was clear. This was just the beginning. The battle for the future of Earth had only started. The Council would not let this attack go unanswered, and with the power they held, they could bring destruction to humanity in ways Earth couldn't even begin to imagine. Commander Blake stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the unfolding battle from the front lines. His crew moved quickly, executing orders with military precision. Every movement was calculated, every decision critical. Despite the chaos of war, Blake's mind remained focused. He knew that this was a fight for Earth's survival, but he also understood that it was more than just a fight for power. It was a fight for respect. "Captain, we've detected reinforcements coming from the outer rim," a crew member reported. Blake's jaw tightened. "We can't let them regroup. Prepare for the next wave. We need to hit them harder." As the enemy forces closed in, Blake knew that their next move would decide the outcome of this battle. Humanity's resolve had already been tested, but now it would be tested again. The Council had underestimated Earth, and now the galaxy would witness the full force of humanity's anger and determination. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Galactic Council station, Villarn and his closest allies held an emergency meeting. The first wave of humanity's attack had shattered their expectations. They had assumed that Earth would hesitate, that diplomacy would keep humanity from retaliating. But they were wrong. "We were too confident," Villarn said, pacing in front of the other council members. "The humans are more dangerous than we realized." "But how?" one of the other council members asked. "We had them cornered. They should have been desperate for peace." Villarn stopped pacing and turned to face the others. "It's their pride, their belief in themselves. They won't bow to us. We must stop this rebellion before it grows." The council members exchanged nervous glances, realizing the full extent of the threat humanity posed. Villarn's eyes glowed with determination. "We cannot afford to show weakness. We must act now. Send all available forces to crush the humans." As the council began to mobilize their remaining forces, Commander Blake and Earth's fleet continued their offensive. The tension in space was palpable. Both sides knew that the next move could decide the fate of the galaxy. And as the battle raged on, one thing became clear: Earth's fight for survival had only just begun. Blake stood firm, watching as enemy ships approached. He wasn't just fighting for Earth's future, he was fighting for humanity's place among the stars. The battle raged on across the stars, and the space between Earth's fleet and the Galactic Council's forces had become a deadly chessboard. Commander Jason Blake stood at the helm of the flagship, his hands gripping the rail as he watched the chaos unfold before him. The lights flickered, and the hum of engines reverberated through the ship. Around him, the crew moved with a sense of purpose, their eyes sharp, their movements swift. The stakes had never been higher. The first wave of attack had proven effective, but now the Council's reinforcements were arriving, and they were bigger and more powerful than Blake had anticipated. Their fleet was massive, with warships that dwarfed those of Earth's military. But despite their size, Blake was confident. The humans had the element of surprise on their side, and their tactics were unconventional, unpredictable, just like the humans themselves. "Commander, the enemy fleet is closing in," the tactical officer reported, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We're outnumbered, but we have them on the defensive." Blake nodded, his eyes scanning the display screens as the enemy ships surrounded them. "Hold the line," he said, his voice calm. "We're not backing down now." On the Council's warships, Villarn's face was filled with a mix of frustration and rage. He had never expected Earth to fight back so fiercely. The humans had shown courage, resilience, qualities the Council had never associated with them. It had been a mistake to underestimate Earth, and now they were paying the price. "We can't let them push us back," Villarn growled, turning to his officers. "Mobilize everything we have. We will crush them." The Galactic Council's ships surged forward, their weapons blazing as they launched a massive counteroffensive. The space around them lit up with explosions, the sound of battle echoing through the void. Earth's fleet, despite being smaller, fought with unmatched ferocity. Each ship was expertly commanded, each crew member willing to lay down their life for the mission. Blake's ship dodged incoming fire, the shields flickering with every hit. He knew the Council's tactics well. They were relying on their numbers to overwhelm them. But Blake had a plan. "Bring the heavy weapons online," he ordered. "It's time to turn the tide." A deep rumble echoed through the ship as the weapons were primed. Blake's fingers hovered over the controls as he watched the enemy ships draw closer. He took a breath, his mind focused on the next move. This was more than just a military strategy. This was a test of humanity's resolve. Would they give up, or would they fight until their last breath? "Fire!" Blake shouted, his voice full of command. The flagship unleashed a powerful barrage of missiles and laser fire, cutting through the incoming enemy ships. The blast was enough to create a gap in the Council's formation, allowing Earth's fleet to press forward. The tides of battle shifted. Earth's ships, though outnumbered, were proving to be more than capable of holding their own. On the ground below, the people of Earth watched in awe as their fleet stood strong against the might of the Galactic Council. News of the battle spread quickly, and a sense of unity washed over the planet. For the first time in history, humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy. Back in space, Blake watched as the battle unfolded. The Council was weakening, but he knew it wasn't over yet. More battles would come, but Earth had proven one thing today: it would not be silenced. It would not be crushed. And as the flagship moved through the battle, Blake knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had made its stand, and the galaxy would never forget what happened next. The battle had stretched on for what felt like an eternity. The vastness of space was filled with the fire of laser blasts, the hum of engines, and the screams of ships as they collided with one another. Earth's fleet had fought with everything they had, but the Galactic Council's forces were relentless. Despite humanity's determination, the odds were still stacked against them. Commander Jason Blake stood at the front of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the chaotic scene unfolding outside the windows. The stakes had never been higher, and Earth's future depended on the decisions made in the next few moments. "We can't keep this up for much longer," the tactical officer said, his voice tight with stress. "The Council's fleet is more powerful than we anticipated. We've lost 3 ships in the past hour." Blake gritted his teeth. He knew this wasn't just about a fight. It was about proving to the galaxy that humanity would not be crushed. The Council had underestimated them, but Blake was determined to make them realize the mistake. "We can't afford to lose any more ships. We need to end this now." As the battle raged, Blake's mind raced, trying to find a way to turn the tide. Then, something caught his attention. On the edge of the battlefield, a small but heavily armed Council ship appeared to be retreating. Its shields were flickering, and it looked like it was trying to escape the conflict. "That ship," Blake murmured, his eyes narrowing. "That's where the Council's leaders are hiding." It made sense. Vlarn, the leader of the Galactic Council, had to be on board. If Blake could take down that ship, the Council's morale would shatter. Their leadership would be lost, and it would give Earth's fleet the upper hand. "Captain, target that ship," Blake ordered. "Take it down now." The crew moved quickly, their hands flying over the controls. The flagship aimed its weapons at the retreating ship, and with a sharp hiss of energy, the weapons fired. A direct hit tore through the enemy shields, causing a massive explosion. The Council ship spun out of control and exploded in a burst of light. Blake felt a rush of adrenaline, but he knew this was just one victory in a long and brutal war. He watched as the remnants of the ship scattered across space. The Council would have to regroup, but their confidence was shaken. As the battle continued, Blake received a transmission. It was from the President herself, Evelyn Pierce. Her voice came through clear, her tone filled with determination. "Commander Blake, this is President Pierce. We've received word that Villarn and his allies are fleeing the Council station. The remaining factions are in disarray. Now is our chance. We need to push forward and take control of the station." Blake's heart raced. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for. If they could seize the Council station, the war could be won. The galaxy would understand that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. "Understood, Mom," Blake said. "We're moving in." The flagship turned its course, heading straight for the heart of the Galactic Council's power. The tide of the battle had shifted, and now it was up to Blake and Earth's fleet to finish what they had started. As they approached the Council station, Blake could see the once proud fleet faltering. The battle had taken its toll, and the Council no longer held the power they once had. It was humanity's time to strike. With the determination of 1,000 soldiers, Blake led the charge. The war was far from over, but now, Earth had the upper hand. The galaxy would never forget the message humanity had sent that day. The space around Earth's fleet was a swirling mess of debris, fire, and the wreckage of destroyed warships. The battle was reaching its peak, and Commander Jason Blake knew that the next few hours would decide the fate of humanity. With the Galactic Council's leadership in disarray, this was the perfect moment to strike. Blake stood at the bridge of the flagship, his eyes focused on the Council's massive station ahead. It loomed in the distance like a dark fortress, its lights flickering as its defenses weakened. The once proud symbol of galactic power was now vulnerable, and Earth's fleet was determined to see it fall. "We've pushed them to the edge," Blake said, his voice calm, though his heart raced. "But this is the final strike. We need to take control of that station before they have a chance to regroup." The crew around him worked with precise efficiency. Weapons systems hummed, shields glowed, and the navigational crew kept the ship on course toward the heart of the enemy's stronghold. Earth's fleet had suffered losses, but the remaining ships were united and focused. They had fought for too long and too hard to back down now. "Captain, incoming enemy fighters," the tactical officer called. "They're trying to stop our advance. There are too many of them." Blake's eyes narrowed. This was it, the final push. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. But there was no turning back now. "Take them out. Focus fire on the lead ships and clear a path for us." The flagship's weapons erupted with power as they fired on the incoming fighters. Laser blasts filled the space around them, cutting through the enemy ships with precision. Earth's fleet followed suit, unleashing everything they had on the remaining Council forces. Despite the overwhelming numbers of the enemy fighters, Blake's fleet fought with unyielding resolve. The unity and strength of humanity were shining through as the enemy's line began to break. The flagship closed in on the Galactic Council station, and Blake's pulse quickened. This was the moment. As the fleet drew closer, a transmission came through from President Evelyn Pierce. "Commander, we're getting reports of the last of the Council's leadership fleeing the station," she said. "This is your chance. Capture the station and end this conflict. Bring us victory." Blake clenched his fists. This was what they had been fighting for all along. The chance to prove that humanity was no longer a weak, isolated species. They were powerful. They were unstoppable. "Understood, ma'am," Blake said. He turned to his crew. "Prepare to board the station. We're taking it now." With the station now within range, Earth's ships began to maneuver into position. The battle had been fierce, but the Council's forces were faltering. The flagship's engines roared as they closed the distance, the crew ready for what would come next. Blake knew they had only one chance at this. The enemy was weakened, but the station was still a formidable fortress. There were no guarantees, no assurances of victory, only the will to fight. As the fleet surrounded the station, Blake gave the order. "Launch the boarding teams." Teams of highly trained soldiers from Earth's fleet descended onto the station, using transport shuttles to breach the station's defenses. The battle was now taking place on the station itself, and the Council was caught off guard. They had thought they could hold humanity back with threats and military power, but they had underestimated Earth's resolve. Blake's eyes stayed locked on the station's core, watching as Earth's forces fought to secure their victory. The final strike had been made. The Council had underestimated humanity for the last time. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Earth was no longer a weakling. Earth was a force that would be reckoned with. The Galactic Council station, once a symbol of power and authority, now lay in ruins. Earth's fleet had fought through its defenses, and humanity had taken control of what was once the heart of the galaxy's most powerful coalition. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Yet, for the first time in centuries, the people of Earth could look to the stars with a sense of triumph. Commander Jason Blake stood at the bridge of the flagship, gazing out at the remains of the station. Smoke and debris floated in space, a testament to the fierce struggle that had unfolded. The station that had once towered over the galaxy now stood silent and broken. The crew around him moved quickly, securing their hold on the station and making sure it was safe for humanity to take full control. "Commander Blake," the tactical officer called, his voice filled with relief. "The last of the Council's remaining forces have surrendered. We've secured the station." Blake nodded, though his expression remained serious. They had won the battle, but the consequences were just beginning to sink in. The galaxy had watched, and humanity had shown its strength. But now, the question remained, what would happen next? As Earth's forces moved to stabilize the station, President Evelyn Pierce sent a transmission. Her image flickered to life on the bridge, her face a mix of pride and concern. "Commander Blake, you've done it. Earth has proven that it can stand up to the most powerful forces in the galaxy," she said, her voice steady. "But this victory comes with a price. The Galactic Council is in chaos. We must move quickly to ensure that we don't become the next target. We need to rebuild, but we also need to prepare for what's next." Blake took a deep breath, looking around at the crew members working around him. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about establishing a new place for humanity among the stars, one where they would no longer be seen as weak or easily controlled. "Understood, Mom," Blake said, his voice calm but resolute. "We'll hold the station and secure Earth's position. We won't let anyone threaten our people again." The war had cost them much, but the fight had been worth it. Earth's strength had been tested, and humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated. The galaxy would have to reckon with Earth from now on. Blake turned to the crew. "Prepare for the next steps. We've taken the first step in securing peace, but now we need to ensure that the peace we fought for isn't shattered by those who still see us as a threat." As the flagship began to move away from the wreckage of the Galactic Council station, Blake's mind raced. They had won, but their victory was only the beginning of a new chapter. The galaxy would not forget the power humanity had displayed, but there would be new challenges ahead. Other factions would rise, others who might seek to exploit the power vacuum left by the Council's fall. Blake looked out at the stars, a sense of purpose filling him. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Earth would no longer be ignored. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy. The dawn of a new era had begun, and Earth would stand at the forefront.